Hey folks, this is another episode of The Gun Guys from Wilson Combat. I'm Ken Hackathorn and my buddy Bill Wilson here today, and we're going to talk about some revolvers that are near and dear to his heart. I don't think I know anybody that is a bigger fan of the Colt Python than Bill Wilson. And in reality, a bit of a subject matter expert. You've probably got as many rare pythons than as anybody I know. So you brought a couple today to talk about. And clearly, they're both pretty special guns. But tell us how you kind of got involved in pythons. What led you down that path, Bill?
Well, Ken, I'm not really sure. I mean, before I got into the Wilson Combat type business, before I started, being a gunsmith and doing the custom work and stuff like that, I'd been in the retail business for a few years prior to that. Actually, started in the gun business in 1972. Wow. In a small retail store, and I really think the way it happened, as I remember it, a small town, small gun shop, you don't move a lot of product. I mean, it's a good way to starve to death. So I know we had a couple of pythons in inventory there, and I think probably because I was having trouble selling them, I decided to take one of those and start shooting with it. And I was shooting PPC at that time, and that's kind of what I started shooting the PPC with, was one of the Colt Pythons. And I was just so impressed with the quality of workmanship on the gun and the great trigger on it, and especially how accurate the guns were. Mm-hmm. I mean, as you know, the Pythons have like a 1 in 14 twist, where the Smiths, have a 1 in 16, or some of them even a 1 in 18 something. Yeah. And for some reason, the loads that I was shooting, that 1 in 14 twist, those guns were extremely accurate.
Yeah. Well, I can remember when I first met you that I think that old Python you still shoot it once in a while, don't you? It's been rebuilt a few times.
Yeah, it's had a rough life, but it's still fun. The gun's still functional, and matter of fact, I used it in one of the training episodes. So.
Cool. I think, and you would agree, that in America today, probably the most famous or most popular revolver that everybody talks about and everybody wants. I mean, let's be honest, look on Gunbroker at the prices. The Colt Pythons almost has reached a mythical place in the market.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's due to the fact that they haven't been produced for years, the quality of them and their viewership on TV, the heroes shooting pythons in the TV series. And, anybody that handles one, I don't think they're ever going to say, well, I don't like this.
Yeah. I've always been a believer that it's without a doubt one of the most attractive revolvers ever made. Now, again, you're a big fan of it because you grew up with the Python. I grew up in the Smith & Wesson world. And while it's clearly one of the most attractive revolvers I know of, I mean, they are beautiful. From a durability standpoint, while they're accurate, we both know that there's some real flaws. It's not the Python, it's the Colt double action design. As you and I have talked about, this gun came out on the market somewhere, I remember correctly, it was introduced in 55, but it really didn't start to hit the dealer shelves until 56. So the gun's been around a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting because, a few years ago, when I was involved with Colt, some of those guys were telling me that in the latter years of the production of the Python, they couldn't give them away.
Yeah.
The way they got rid of them is they would take orders to the big dealers and say, if you buy like 25 of these guns, we'll throw in a couple Pythons. But now, though, since they're unavailable, of course, they've become kind of a holy grail for a lot of people, particularly if you're a collector. You got to have a Python just to be.
Yeah. Well, I know when I had the little retail store there for the last year or so of it in 1974, I remember having a 8-inch blue and 38 special in stock. Couldn't give that gun away. I mean, I price it below what I'd paid for it, and still nobody was interested in that gun.
Barrel length wise, what you probably remember, what were the barrel lengths available in the Python revolver?
Well, the most common was a 6-inch. Yeah. Probably, I would be surprised if 50% of the guns didn't go out with 6-inch barrels. And then next in volume that was produced would have been a 4-inch barrel. Mm-hmm. And then it would have been the 2.5-inch barrel. And then the rarest of the rare is the 3-inch barrel, which are very, very few 3-inch guns.
3 inches, and kind of to Python people, the 3-inch is the holy grail gun now. Yeah. I remember correctly, you and I kind of made contact about the availability of that gun. How I forget some of the details, but I think if I remember correctly, I was in a Cabela store in Missoula, Montana.
Yep.
And that thing was new in the box. Was a number of Pythons were being sold, I think, as an estate sale or something.
Yes.
And I called you.
Yeah, I was on my drive back from the company, coming back to the ranch here in Texas, and I remember exactly where I was. I pulled off the side of the road. Old buddy Ken's on the phone, and you start telling me about, the new in the box 3-inch, a new in the box 6-inch, and a real clean with the box 6-inch blue, that's 90+%. And you start rattling off the prices they got on them. I'm starting to have start hyperventilate now. It's like, holy crap, And so, I remember asking you, can you put the sales guy on the phone? I'm like, can you, what's the deal if I take all 3 of them? And the guy says, well, I don't have any authority to do that. I'm just, working at the counter. The sales manager already went on for the day. The department manager said, I said, well, how about this? How about if you just put them behind the counter now and you leave a note with them to have that manager call me in the morning? Well, he told me what time the manager comes in the morning. I'm like, it's 2 minutes after the guy hadn't called me. So I'm on the phone to the guy, and say, hey, what's the deal on those Pythons? Yeah, we're selling it for some estate or whatever. So what kind of deal will you make me if I just take all 3 of them? And he crunches up the numbers. He drops like $200 off the price of the 3 of them. And I haul around, trying to act like I'm not interested a little bit on the phone, a little pause and stuff like that. And I'll tell you what, I'll take you up on that as long as you ship them for free. And long story short, folks, the guns were priced so stupid cheap. The first asking price, I almost felt guilty, but it took me a couple minutes, and I got over that. Yeah. But bottom line, bought all three guns for about what the 6-inch blue new in the box was worth. And this gun here, it's the prices are astronomical on that gun now.
Yeah. I'll be honest, when I first looked at it, I saw there was the box with the label that said what it was. I said, that's the real deal. For a minute, I thought about buying it. But I thought, that's going to be a mistake because I'm not a Python guy. But I know the guy. Because we had talked earlier, mm-hmm. You were in the search for this. Mm-hmm. And you had bought, I think, one that turned out to have been not a factory original gun. And you returned it because the barrel...
Well, yeah, the mythical nickel one wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd already had one blue one that was legit. And a guy tried to sell me a nickel one.
It was humped.
Fortunately, it was an honest guy, and I was able to return it. But it turned out that was just a unicorn.
Yeah, Bill, we've got a pretty unique gun here. This is probably one of the most attractive Pythons ever seen. Obviously, fully engraved ivory stocks. I got to believe this is pretty unique, even for your collection.
Yeah, that is a top of the line engraving job. I don't think the Colt factory engravers did any more extensive than that. Yeah, I've got factory letter on it. It's in a presentation case because that's a custom shop gun. Mm-hmm. It was built in the Colt custom shop, and it's kind of one of the pride of my collection.
I bet. Well, you can see there's full coverage everywhere on that.
Yeah,
that's spectacular. One of the things you and I have talked about, Bill, is while these guns were, famous for their accuracy, one of the problems was always the issue of durability. As we can explain to the folks, if you fire this revolver single action, and back in the day when this was designed as a target gun, that's how people shot revolvers. Yeah. When you shoot them double action, there's a little bit difference in the chain of events of it locking up. Single action, when you cock it, it carries the cylinder up and locks it. But when you shoot it double action, actually the sear releases the hammer before the cylinder.
Yeah, cylinder still turning right into the lock position as the hammer's falling.
And they call it the advancing hand concept. Mm-hmm. The problem we know, especially with Magnum ammo and fast double action work, is they go out of time pretty quick where actually the hammer hits the primer before the cylinder's locked and you get misfires. Yeah. Now, you and I have talked about it. That problem could have been fixed very easy with one minor engineering.
Oh yeah, Ken. My original Python that I've shot, to death, it went out of time a couple of times, and I just, started looking at it, it's like, the only reason this thing's going out of time is because there's nothing to stop that hand from continue to push that cylinder around, you know,
Which wears the hand.
It just basically just binds. You know,
Yeah.
it comes up and the whole
And
thing.
eventually the
just binds
hand
up.
wears and it doesn't carry up.
And then it doesn't carry up. It's like, well, once you get it in time, all you got to do is put an over travel stop in it. So right before it starts doing that excessive push on the cylinder rotation, the trigger stops.
Yeah.
And I did that on that old gun, and God, there's no telling how many tens of thousands of rounds I fired through that pistol after that revolver after that, and never out of time again. I mean, no issues after that. And so every shooter Python that I got after that, first thing I did after, you know, tuned the action a little bit, always put an over travel stop in it. And I never had any more issues with guns going out of time.
And it was interesting back in the day. There was Fred Sadowski out in Denver, Reeves Junkin down in Oklahoma,
Jerry Moran up in
Jerry
Michigan.
Moran in Michigan that were known for their actions. But the real secret was in some cases they did case harden the hand some of the parts, but that was the real secret. They all put an over travel stop, some of them internally, that solved the problem.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, people talk about the PPC area was actually ruled by Smith & Wesson revolvers. Not because they were more accurate, but because they lasted longer and you could get a better action on them without issues. So it's amazing to me and you both, I think, that Colt never addressed that and he could have done it very simply.
Yeah, because all of those old builders that you talked about that built the PPC guns back in the day, they all you know, put the over travel stops in so the guns would hold up.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things that's interesting is when I worked for Colt a couple years ago, and you go to the trade show, SHOT Show, NRA show, it was about every third or fourth person coming into the Colt booth would say, "When are you going to make Pythons again?" And my answer was always never.
Yeah.
Because the guys who built these are all either retired or dead. And what people don't understand about the Colt, the Python in particular, these guns were not assembled; they were fitted meticulously.
Oh yeah. Just like the guns previous to that, like the Shooting Masters and stuff like that. I mean, they were built by skilled gun builders.
Yeah.
You know, there were no assemblers in those days.
No. And the end result is that technology in America, you know, with the exception of say at Wilson Combat, the way you guys build guns, where you have technicians that are skilled fitting every component of the gun. Probably the demise of the revolver is the fact that it takes some skill to fit those things. It's just kind of almost like being a watchmaker to make these things work right.
Yes.
And it's interesting. You let one part get a little bit out of whack, and boy, they don't work worth a hoot.
Oh yeah, you could take one of these and just change the hand in it, or you know, change the hammer in it, just one part, and you'd be lucky if the gun would you could even cock and turn the cylinder with it. That would be so far out of time.
Well, you know, folks, it's been a pleasure to talk to my old buddy Bill about one of his most passionate and favorite handguns, which is the Colt Python. And I think I've certainly learned a lot over the years from you about the Python. And it was a real pleasure, brother. Thank you.
Amen.